integrate and balance your divine and human nature. And really the gist of my work is teaching people how to live differently with opposites, so that the fundamental struggles that we have a better way to deal with. We know our human nature pretty well, and we've put a lot of time and energy into discovering our divine nature. So the question then is, how do you keep them both in balance? And how do you let your divine nature actually inform your human nature? And how do you let your human nature inform your spiritual nature, what it needs? So sometimes what happens is people take the learnings that they have from their spiritual exploration and attempt to bring it to the human level, and you take that map with you. You've mapped it out and you know what lies in it and you understand how it functions and what you need to be in the Himalayas. You take that map with you and suddenly you find yourself in the Sahara Desert, and you're trying to give people a way to navigate the Sahara Desert with a map of the Himalayas. So my work is really about saying that's great, and you really need to also have a map of the Sahara Desert. And when you understand that you're working with two maps at the same time, and you can allow flow of communication between the two dimensions, it becomes a lot easier to actually affect change in the human psyche at the unconscious level, which is the level of the mind that actually gives permission for change. It either says, yeah, you can change, or no, you can't, and I'm going to resist every effort you make, which is the feedback a lot of people get in their experience when they try to do spiritual living in the Sahara Desert, because it's very hard, because it's not the same lay of the land as it is when you're in the spiritual dimension. So my work is really about showing you what the lay of the land is that's relevant here, by looking at a lot of mystical guidelines that are particular to my work, and then showing people how to do that and to do what you need to know the layout of the spiritual dimension. That's your primary resource. But it doesn't really help you affect change in the Sahara Desert unless you have a map to help you navigate that. The Sahara Desert is ultimately our relationship with opposites, because we want to get rid of the bad and keep the good. And this is completely not a good strategy. And in order to deal with that, ultimately you have to come to peace with the notion of paradox and the experience of paradox. And that is actually really the core of what my work is about. It's a very precise map for how to navigate opposites and live with paradox and find a different brand of happiness and a different kind of peace of mind that can stay with you when you're in the desert.
Mm-hmm. You do pose, though, that divine nature and human nature are in fact opposites.
They're opposites from the human perspective. From the spiritual perspective, not in the least. Mm-hmm. It's all one whole. But if you don't understand from the human perspective, which is your unconscious mind, which is what you are having to struggle with every day, no matter what you understand spiritually, if your unconscious mind has not been altered to accept what you understand, then it will fight you every step of the way.
Give us a little aerial description of the map in the divine and map in the human realms.
Well, the human map says, okay, if life is made of good and bad, then let's keep the good and get rid of the bad. So we're struggling to accomplish that, and that's really the set of directions we have to navigate life. If you want to be happy, if you want to be spiritual, get rid of the bad side of being human, first of all. And then, ultimately, once you've gotten rid of it for good, right, then everything that's good about you as a human being is kind of the spiritual free to come forth, which is not really the way it's working. You know, as on this plane of reality, opposites are what make up our life. It's the fabric, and what life actually is, in a nutshell, is the tension between opposites. Your unconscious mind is working to erase that tension as much as it can, so you've got this inner struggle going on. My work helps you understand that, helps you learn what to do to live with it in a way that allows you to find peace and happiness, because you're not going to get rid of the dark side of human beings permanently, forever, never to arise again in your thoughts or your emotions. It's just not going to happen. So it's a misunderstanding, because enlightenment really doesn't mean the absence of all of that. It just means you have a different perspective. The trick is to actually understand what we're doing that isn't working, and then get another way that the mystics have been telling us for ages does work. But what I'm trying to do is give people a map that the desert that can be used in the desert. Okay, not up in the Himalayas where it's already beautiful and gorgeous, but in the Sahara where there's like, I need water, I need. Right. Desire is more obvious in the desert, perhaps. So yes, in this workshop they will learn they'll learn the basic idea. They won't learn the full 6 steps, but they will get the basic idea of what they need to know to actually learn how to do this shit. But some of the mystics that I've also studied with and studied who are not around anymore, I did a study of the psychology of the mystics and looked at what was different in their psychology as a human being who was a mystic and the psychology of the person who was just ordinary psychology. And the work is basically based upon what I found there. And the 2 fundamental things were they all related to opposites in the same way, and it was not the way the average person did, and they all embraced impermanence. And the reason they could embrace impermanence was because of the way they related to opposites. So the workshop is the work is based on Sangston, the 3rd Zen patriarch, or Sosan as some people call him, with his comment to set up what you like against what you dislike is the dis-ease of the mind. This is what we do. So when you do that, then you distress the mind. So how do you do it so you don't distress the mind? That's what the workshop is about. Nisargadatta, who is an Indian mystic, he had said that love tells me I'm everything, wisdom tells me I'm nothing, my life flows between these 2. If you can get that in your brain, in your body, coded in your neurophysiology, then you got a whole different life that you're seeing out of your eyes and you're hearing out of your ears and you're feeling in your body. And this is doable if you understand you have to help your unconscious mind who still and always will live in the desert. It needs a different understanding. So those are just a couple of things. And of course some things from Osho, who was also my spiritual master for a long time.
That's beautiful.
It relates to women in the sense that I find women to be, first of all, more interested in all of this. But second of all, women have a natural capacity, I think, that's built into them to be able to feel things differently, a little bit more easily, closer to the bone, so to speak, with their emotions. And the key to this really is instead of empowering us as women by being anti-men, which we don't really do anymore, but still in your inner world, you have to balance your own feminine energy with your own masculine energy. To do that in a way that works in the world, to be practical and to really impact the social awakening the social potential that we're trying to awaken in the world on this planet. Women have the capacity to understand and embrace paradox far more easily in their being, not just in their mind. Women are more able to embrace, naturally, just embrace. And what you have to embrace here is a difficult concept and a difficult experience, and it's just paradox. That we're both, and life is always going to be both. Positive and negative, high and low, spiritual and material. And it's also going to be loving and hateful. And that's hard for people to get sometimes, that you're going to feel still hate in your body. Compassion, yes, and anger. Because life still happens moment to moment. And you still have a personality that's going to react, and you still have an unconscious mind that's programmed to function in a particular way. So the key in my work, anyway, is paradox. And I think women are way more capable of getting that as quickly as we need it. In a way, it frees you, from being the source of the power. It finally puts the horse in front of the cart. And that makes life a lot easier. It makes you a better leader. Because there's no way, if you only use your own mind, that you have the capacity to see a big enough picture to really know what's going on. So you get relieved in a way from having to have your power, right? Or even feminine power. You have power that embraces all of it, where there is no words. And you learn to let it take the lead. You say, okay, I'm the cart, you're the horse. Lead me where you want to go. It's tricky because you can think you're doing that, and if you can only know yourself inside whether you are or you're not. But you can easily get caught up then in thinking there are power struggles. If you're in a power struggle, you can be sure that you have now taken sides with one polarity, with one opposite against the other one. A power struggle is a terrific signal that you are in the world of duality and you've lost your direction for how to navigate it in a way that keeps you connected with the power that drives us and makes us alive. It isn't. Feminine power is bigger than just feminine and negative. It's the whole, which is neither and both. And to understand that is to fully have a power that's beyond the kind of power that we're taught. In the outside world, you're struggling with someone else probably over to get an outcome. You'll still end up maybe doing that. But if you know that this power, that you can change that power struggle, and you understand that there's a place for that opinion and your opinion. Okay, and the challenge is to find out where the two meet. Okay, so that you can work together. The problem with negotiation and compromise is that it tends to leave out things. You tend to take the best of both and forget about the negative, which then shows up someplace else. So the process that I have really shows you how to deal with both the positive of both sides, both viewpoints, and the negative of both viewpoints, and how they complement each other. There is really no antagonism between opposites from a mystical perspective. Now, in the human perspective, yes. But you can balance that human perspective with the spiritual perspective if you actually can see the harmony and the complementarities in the opposites that are in a power struggle. And that changes the way you relate to it. I love to be training people who are out there who are activists, because the energy that you bring to social action has a lot to do with what occurs. And if you have an unconscious drive or energy influencing the choices to go from one opposite to the other side, which is usually what we do. We say, compromise doesn't work, so we'll do the opposite of that. Or in business, hierarchy doesn't work, so let's go flat, and have everybody be equal in the power struggle. Or being alone didn't work, so we need to move to togetherness, our community. We need to go from isolation back to community. But as long as you don't understand paradox and the dynamic between opposites, you just keep going back and forth and thinking, this is the solution. And then it turns into the problem. And then you look to the opposite again to be the new solution, missing the fact that this is the pattern you do again and again and again. So if you understand that, and you understand the real solution is not in going to the opposite, but in coming up a level and seeing how they complement each other, how the harmony is there, and being able to find them. You can't really do it if it's only an idea. You have to have leaders that have embodied the capacity to hold paradox and to live with it, and to stay equanimous, balanced, and integrated with both avenues of communication without making one better or worse than the other. That's the key. We have to stop making spirituality better, or the divine better than human, and the human lesser than the divine, which we really do, almost automatically. And that doesn't help. All the things that we're doing to help us become better people, they're not in vain. They all help. Everything does good. But the unconscious still thinks there's going to be a time when there's not going to be any problems anymore. And I think part of the wisdom of new leadership, social leadership, is to start getting rid of that notion which is inaccurate.